Hello, hello. Welcome to the replay. It's Monday. It's lunchtime. And it's time for your lunchtime scoop about writing. Hey guys, hello. Welcome as you're joining. Lots of familiar faces. Pop in, say hi. Tell me where you're coming in from. Tell me what you're writing. Hey Aisha. Good to see you. Hey Shalon. How are y'all doing today? Everyone have a good weekend? I was not on Periscope at all this weekend. I was really proud of myself. I was like, I'm taking it off. We went mini golfing, par 27 for the kids. They're really bad at mini golfing, but it was cute to watch them. They're 5 and 3. Thanks, Shalon. Yeah, it was fun. It was a good weekend. And now, hey, Jim, first time in. How you doing? Where are you coming in from? Your profile says New York. Are you really in New York? I lived in New York. It was crazy. We lived in Brooklyn for a few years. For 3 winters, as I count it. It wasn't quite 3 years, but it was 3 winters in Brooklyn, which was intense. And we had small kids. Now we're in Texas. So, welcome everyone as you're joining today. We're doing a lunchtime scope on writing and Long Island. Nice. I taught at Malloy College. Love Long Island. So fun. Courtney, you spent yours writing the intro and conclusion of your thesis. Yay! Good job. Super productive. And nice that you wrote both the intro and the conclusion at the same time because they are indeed bookends and they should be written at the same time. So, props for that. Okay, guys. So let's talk about some common writing mistakes that readers hate. And so I'm going to go through all 5. For the benefit of the people that are watching the replay. And then if you want to ask questions, stick around and we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about with writing. So these are 5 things that I see writers do all the time. Thanks for the hearts, guys. Yeah, if anything resonates while we're talking, go ahead and tap the screen and let me know. And that way I can know what works for you guys. And if you're not following me and you like to talk about writing, hit the little Perry dude down there and click the plus sign. Or I think it's a check and then it turns into a plus. I don't know. But follow me. We talk about writing a lot. It's fun. Okay, thanks for the hearts. Oh, okay. All right, I'm ready to go now. So the first common writing mistake. Well, actually, I want to preface. Okay, so don't freak out because readers are really generous. We tend to approach writing as if everyone is like judging our every single little word. But honestly, when a reader connects with your message, they're really... Oh, thanks, Shalon. They're really generous with your writing. So if you make an occasional mistake or something's not worded in like the perfect way, readers are usually gonna like still support you. So when you're writing, don't imagine that you're writing to like the most critical people. Imagine that you're writing to someone who's really supportive and wants you to succeed in your writing, and that will help relieve a lot of that pressure. But there are a few things that will drive your reader crazy, and it might not be what you would expect. So the first one is a repetitive sentence structure. Never thought about that, maybe, did you? We all have habits. I have habits. Every one of us here has habits about how we write sentences. So one of my major habits is I write in 3s. So I'm always saying, here's the point, and then I end in a group of 3. So, gosh, I should have written out an example. That would have been a good idea. But, I might say that writing is a really good idea. So you should start with blogging, comma, and journaling, comma, and free writing. So that's like a group of 3. I always do groups of 3. And so a reader will eventually pick up on that. And they're like, why does she always do groups of 3? So change it up. Do 2. You don't really have to do 3. Do 4. Whatever. There's no rule. Just kind of change it up a bit. Another common repetitive sentence structure is people start with like the beginning phrase and they'll say, for instance, or for example, or in this way, comma. So all of those are like a short phrase, comma. Oh, Shalon, you haven't even looked at your sentence structure patterns. I know, these are like things that most people don't ever think about. But when you edit a lot of papers, you start to notice them. So a lot of people will start with that intro phrase that's like 2 or 3 or even 4 words and then comma. In the beginning, comma. As we found, comma. And even worse, we tend to use the exact same phrases over again. So you'll read, like if you write a 10-page paper, you might use although, comma. Hi from Brazil. you might use although, comma, like 20 times in a 10-page paper. And that's really going to drive your reader crazy. So just kind of, when you read through, make a little note. What are your sentence structure patterns? Thanks for inviting followers, Shalon. That's awesome. So just write out a little like sticky note to yourself and say like, what patterns did I notice about my own writing? And hello, Chivas is joining. And sorry, these names are so hard to read. Charlino, I am from Houston, Texas. I'm scoping from Texas today. And it may feel like it's really hard to notice these sentence structures at first, but you'll get really familiar with them, and then you won't even need to refer to your list. So that's tip number 1. And we've got 4 more to go. If you guys end up needing to hop off, oh, hey, Charles. Sorry. Oh, I see. Charlino, Charles. Got it. If you end up guitar gal, yes, structure issues and patterns are the plague. Yeah. Once you start to notice them, it's like that tick that you never noticed before. Like if you have a boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse, whatever, like, and you didn't notice that they do something really repetitively, and then one day you do notice, you're like, oh, now it bothers me all the time. It's the same thing with our own writing. We don't notice it, and then once we do notice it, we're like, oh my gosh, I need to stop this. But before I get too much farther, we have family in Houston. Yay, Houston is crazy hot right now. I did take scope notes, so I have a little, if you don't want to write these down, that's totally fine. I did not do an intro. Okay, I'll do an intro. But I'm putting these on my website, paperravenediting.com/periscope, and I'm going to put the replay and a transcript up here too, but scope notes right there will open up the Evernote file, and you can browse my other scopes. Anyway, okay, so if you have to hop off, go to paperravenediting.com/periscope. And I didn't even do an intro. It's Monday. My brain is gone. I am Morgan Guest McDonald. I'm a writing coach and editor and author, and my website is at paperravenediting.com. I help writers write. I'm actually refocusing and rebranding. I'm focusing all of my energy on helping people to write books. So if you have a book that is like in your body and your soul and it's calling to you. Oh, hi, Connor. Thanks for popping in and saying hi. If you have a book inside of you and you know it's there, like, I would love to work with you. I coach writers all the way from the beginning of the book process, like brainstorming and free writing, all the way through the conclusion, finished manuscript, ready to publish. So it's a fantastic process. Okay, Courtney, so you need to email me. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Yes, you need to get around to your book. Courtney, you need to email me. I will consider editing your dissertation because we have been in contact before. And I also have a team of people that I'm working with now who are fantastic editors. So we need to get in touch. It's been on your list for years. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, so you need to write your book, Guitar Gal, for sure. All right. Sorry, guys. I totally got sidetracked. We had 5 common writing mistakes that we were talking about here. Number 1 was the repetitive sentence structure. Number 2, you might know this already. Number 2, stiff formal language. Now, okay, we're not talking about big words. Readers are often okay with big words, actually, or uncommon words. But what they're usually not okay with is really stiff wording. So when we start to use the kind of language that we used in English, high school, college, those English paper classes, when we start to say things like, in which, when we use phrases like, in which, so there are 3 cases in which we might consider adding an apostrophe. It's like, in which, no one actually says that. I mean, even when it's grammatically correct, no one talks that way. When we start to use words like, phrases like, hereafter, and hitherto, and, and these types of phrases that really, you know that you're using them when you're trying to impress someone. You can feel it in your bones when it's not something that you would actually say. And the best way, I'll tell you the best way to identify this stiff formal language is to read your writing out loud, whenceforth. Yeah, Jenna, exactly. Read your writing out loud. And this is like totally stepping out of your comfort zone, but it will help you identify the phrases that you're using that really just are not conversational. And I'm not saying that you need to dumb down your language. Readers are fine with big words. What they're not fine with is something that sounds really stiff and reminds them of being in the classroom. They want to talk to you one-to-one. They want to hear your words and your advice, and they don't want to feel like you are giving them a lecture in words, essentially. So that's something to really watch out for. So that's mistake number 2, is that people, I think the reason we do this is really and truly because we want to sound like we know what we're talking about. We want to sound more academic or formal or knowledgeable or like we have expertise, and we think that using this sort of like high formal language will help give that impression off. But that's not what your reader's looking for from you. Your reader's actually looking for connection, understanding, empathy, a knowledge. Yes, they're looking to you for knowledge, but it doesn't have to be from a high ivory tower kind of place, right? They want the knowledge from you, who you really are. Even if you're writing academic papers. And I mean, I know, academia is its own thing, but even, if you're an academic, read Helen Sword's book. I don't even remember what it's called. Helen Sword. It's like her most famous book. Sword, S-W-O-R-D. She did this huge qualitative study on academics and the types of papers that they write and read. Even academics do not like to read academic papers. Seriously. Because of the language. Yes, Aisha, thank you. Stylish academic writing. Yep. That's it. That's the one. By Helen Sword. It's just a turnoff. It's a human nature thing. Whoever you are, we don't like the stiff language. You don't want it. Now, there's a spectrum of casual language. So when you're writing a blog post, you can be super casual, use contractions, use personal pronouns all over the place. When you're writing a bit more formal language, it's fine. I should have had like an example. That's what I'll do next time. I'll bring an example to read. I don't have one with me. You can use the higher vocabulary. You can use a little bit more jargon. You can use more formalized sentence structures, but they still want to feel like they're talking to a person, a human who has real life experiences. Okay, so that's the take home point. Helen Sword's book will change your life and will help you publish more in academia. But particularly when you're writing for lay audiences or businesses or people who might come off on your blog, they really, really want to make sure that they know that they're talking to a real human person. Alrighty, number 3, lack of subheadings. Okay. Subheadings are like the key for helping people to read your writing. So a subheading is just when you break the paragraph with a bolded title that briefly describes what the next section is going to be talking about. So whatever you're writing, whether it's a blog post or a book, you should really have a subheading every 2 to 3 pages. So, well, actually, for a book, it's every 2 to 3 pages. For a blog post, it's every, I wouldn't go more than 5 paragraphs without having a subheading, because the subheading is what helps people to understand the structure of your writing more than anything else. Because when we're writing, we're making all these points, right? And they're sort of in this logical, linear order. Thanks for the hearts, guys. This logical, linear order, but it makes more sense to us than it does the reader, because we have been thinking and processing this whole structure for a while, and the reader is just now coming to it. This is their first time through, and they need a map, and your subheadings are the map for the reader, because they get 5 paragraphs in, and they're like, okay, I already kind of forgot where we are. Even your smartest readers, it's hard to, you're reading the sentence to understand it, you're reading the paragraph to understand the larger point of the paragraph, and then by the time you get through 5 paragraphs, you're like, wait a second, what happened 10 paragraphs ago? Exactly. Thank you, Anderson. Yes, you're so right. Subtitles keep people reading. Exactly. Because they see that you are making a point somewhere down the line. They're like, okay, there's a subheading coming up. We're getting somewhere. We're going into new territory. This is going to be good. So it keeps them interested and willing to engage your writing. Alright, so first we had repetitive sentence structure. Second, we had the stiff formal language. Third, we had lack of subheadings. Thank you. Thanks for the thumbs up. Fourth, acronyms. Some of you may use acronyms more than others, but if you use acronyms, be careful, because people really hate acronyms. I realize in some instances you really need to use acronyms, but when you finish writing something, go back. And so don't worry about it while you're writing. You'll just freak yourself out. Use the acronyms if it's helpful when you're writing. But when you're done writing, go back. And if you can, like, bird's eye eagle looking down at the paper, if you can see more than, like, ballpark 5 to 7 acronyms on a page, it's like, whoa, okay, go back. And start replacing it with synonyms. Even if it's something like vague, like the department, or writing out the whole word again, or, I mean, something. Thank you. Thanks, Anderson. So, something to trigger, to remind them what the acronym is, because that's really the issue, is that even your smartest readers, if there are too many acronyms, even if they know what the acronym is, they lose the connection with why the acronym is important. And so that's kind of the main message here, is that it's easy to rely on things like acronyms, but they're honestly going to drive your reader absolutely nuts. Even readers who are in your same industry. They're not readable. They're not real words. They're substitutes, you know? Hey, Holly G, thanks for joining and sharing. You're awesome. Thanks. So, yep, so we're coming up on the 5th point. Hey, Holly. We're coming up on the 5th point, but I'm going to do a recap, and there are scope notes, so I will show you where those are. Okay, so the 5th major common writing mistake that readers hate is a chapter or a section that ends suddenly. Okay, and let's be honest, when we're writing, this is just because we get really tired and we're like, the end. So this is something that you can do after you have written the first draft of whether it's a blog post or a whole book. After you've written the first draft, kind of go back and look at each especially each chapter. Like, each chapter really needs to have kind of a sum up, a feel-good moment, because likely, boo, sudden endings, I know, I'm totally with you. Likely, the person is gonna, if it's a book, they're gonna put the book down at the end of the chapter. And so you need to think, what do you want the feeling or the emotional connection with the reader to be when they put the book down? And so that ending is so, so important. And think about your readers' habits. So, this is my own reading habits. When I'm reading, we're going to talk about a book for just a second longer. When I'm reading a book, I will often, so I'll begin a chapter. I'll read, like, I don't know, it depends on how tired I am if I'm reading at night. I'll read like 5 pages, and then the next 5 I'll pick up in the middle of the chapter and just sort of read 5-10 pages at a time. And I'm even a pretty avid reader, and life is just busy for all of us, right? And so we read 5, 10, maybe 20 pages at a time. And then we put it down, pick it back up right in the middle. So the ending of the chapter is so important because you need to remind your reader what they covered in that chapter. You need to remind them that that chapter was really important. It had a purpose and that they needed to hear that message. And then you need to lead them with like this feel-good, like, this is going to apply to your life or to your study or to your research in some way, right? Kind of a feel-good connection moment. And then a little look forward, a little preview, what's coming up next. And if you do that preview right, you'll get them to at least start the next chapter. And that momentum is really key. Thanks for the hearts, guys. I really appreciate it. And you invited someone. Thanks, Anderson. So that's kind of how the best way to end a chapter is like a wrap-up summary of the points that you made and why that chapter was important to the reader. And you want to leave it with not just, here's what I'm really getting at, not just bullet points, right? It can't just be a bullet point list of summaries because that's not engaging. You need the wrap-up to really pull them in. Hey, Jyotsna, thanks for joining. Good to see you. To really pull them in and to feel like this chapter was important to them. And not just a summary bullet point list, but like paragraphs describing, describing why this can really impact either their life or their research or their business or whatever. And then a little preview into the next chapter. All right, guys, so let's do the quick recap. If you do have to jump off, I know some of you have been with me for a little bit, but if you do have to jump off, go to my website, paperravenediting.com/periscope, and that is where, especially for my key content scopes, I post, you can see the scope notes right there. I will post a replay and a transcript as well. So you can see some of my most recent scopes. They all have the scope notes. Thanks, Joycena, for posting that. They should have the scope notes in the replay and the transcript. So that was paperravenediting.com/periscope. Alrighty, let's do the recap. So, 5 common mistakes that most readers hate. All readers hate. The URL again, paperravenediting.com/periscope. Number 1, repetitive sentence structure. Beginning your sentences with things like, although, comma, however, comma, in the beginning, comma. That's annoying. Or, what I do very often is the ending in 3s. You should try writing, including blogging, comma, journaling, comma, and free writing. You know, the 3s, the groups of 3s. I do that all the time. I need to stop that. But this is the sort of thing that you write the first draft and you go back in, and when you're editing, you can write down your tendencies for repetitive sentence structures. Thanks, Anderson. I know, silly, right? Okay, number 2, stiff formal language. Whatever kind of writing you do, whether it's blog posts or books or academic writing, people want to connect with people. They want to feel like they're talking to a real person, not someone who's up on a stiff stage giving a lecture like a robot. Even if you are presenting really like quantitative heavy research, the words will be much more engaging if they feel like they're coming from a person, a real person, right? So the best way to determine whether you're using stiff language is to read it out loud, and if you feel cheesy, you sound cheesy. So, I mean, that's one way to do it. Okay, number 3, lack of subheadings. Subheadings are really important to keep your reader engaged, to keep them looking forward to the next point, but it's also important to help them understand the main logic and streamlined structure of your writing. And if you're writing a blog post, I would put in a subheading at least every 5 paragraphs. If you're writing a book, I would put in a subheading at least every 2 to 3 pages, because it's that motion of turning the pages that makes people get lost in the paragraphs. So you want to remind them where they are with those subheadings and where we're going with the logical structure. Number 4, this will be more applicable to some than others, but it's a biggie for those who use them, acronyms. People hate acronyms. Even people in your field hate acronyms. So this is another thing that you do after you've already written. Don't worry about it when you're doing your first draft, but go back and remove those acronyms whenever you can. Replace them with a generic word like the department or the movement or whatever, or replace it with the whole whatever the acronym stands for, the whole, 5 words or whatever. Every time you do a new chapter, remind people what the acronym is, because like we just talked about with reader habits, they're probably picking up the book over several days, several different reading sessions. Number 5, readers hate a chapter or section that ends really suddenly. It feels like a breakup where the writer doesn't care about you anymore. Thanks for the hearts, guys. So the ending of the chapter is super, super, super important. Consider your readers' habits, that they're going to be reading the chapter in chunks, and they're going to get to the end, and they're going to kind of have forgotten what the chapter was about. So remind them, but not in a summary bullet point list, but in a nice caring paragraphs, like describing what was covered in the chapter and why it's important to them and how it's going to change or transform their life, research, business, whatever. And then give them a little sneak preview into the next so that maybe you'll get them to turn the page and keep reading. So that's it, guys. Those are the 5 points, and you can catch the scope notes and very soon the replay and transcript on the website. Does anybody have any questions? Do you have any, things that you hate or habits that you have that might be helpful for other people on the scope? Type them in and let me know. Guitar Gal, thank you. Thanks. Oh, Lauren. I'm glad to know your name. Guitar Gal Lauren. I'm going to remember that. Do these pertain to novels and business? Yes. Yes. All of the above. Acronyms, I would say, is the main one that is kind of depends on the genre. But even I know like I read sci-fi and stuff sometimes, and sometimes authors who are writing novels get really into their own acronyms. Tony Robbins even does this, where he's like, and Tim Ferriss I think too has like these acronyms that they just come up with, and I think they're really cool. And I guess they are cool, but you forget what they are. And so the author gets really attached to the acronym, and the reader really could care less about the actual acronym. Flowery descriptive adjectives, yes. I totally agree. Anderson, what's your real name? Is Anderson your first name, or Kathy, I just pulled up your profile. Oops. I almost blocked you. I'm not very good at Periscope yet. Kathy, yes, sometimes adjectives are good, especially for fiction writing, and really even nonfiction writing when you're trying to set the scene and why something's important. But you can feel when it's over the top, right? Read it out loud. If it sounds cheesy, it is cheesy. Can you be overly conversational in your own world in a memoir? I think memoirs have a lot of room for playing with the style, because it is a memoir and it is about you. Your own style is really dictated by who you are, and so I think conversational is really fine. What happens in memoir a lot of times is the author gets really turned inward and thinking about her own story or his own story. And you always, while your story is important, that is like the main plot that's driving the book forward, what's equally important is how you want the reader to change through reading the memoir. You want your reader to change their perspective or their mind or their life or their heart about something, right? And so, back to work. Good job, Kathy. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming in. Yeah, it's a lunchtime scope, so I'm hoping to give y'all some inspiration, and then you go write. So, for instance, I'm working with an author right now. It's like quasi-memoir, quasi-advice, quasi-like statistics. She is an engineer who has gone back to work. She has kids now, and she wants to write this book about helping girls to have the confidence to become an engineer. And of course, it's partly her own story because she was an engineer, so she's talking about that some. But what our goal is to always keep in perspective that the bits and pieces of her story that we choose to tell are purposeful. The purpose is to help the reader change her mind about how she thinks of girls in engineering. Does that kind of make sense? So there's always a main driving purpose, some change, some transformation that you want the reader to go through by reading this book. And every story that you tell should contribute to that purpose. So when you're writing a memoir, you always want to think, what is the main transformation that I want the reader to go through when reading this book? And all of your stories should center around that, should be for that purpose. Does that kind of make sense? It's very like some of the stuff when we talk about writing, it sounds very abstract until you're actually in a manuscript, like looking at it. So does anyone else have any questions that you want to talk about? I'm around for a couple more minutes, and then I have to go do some of my own work. I know, Mondays are hard. It's hard to get back to work. Especially since I was on a Periscope fast over the weekend. I might have watched one scope, but it's very hard. Alrighty, guys. Well, feel free to hit me up on Twitter. It's the same handle, @MorganGMac. I will be on Twitter for the rest of my lunchtime, and I'll answer some questions if y'all want. And I will see you tomorrow for another lunchtime scope on writing. So hit the little Perry dude if you haven't already, and follow me. And tomorrow, in fact, I planned out my scopes for the week. Thank you, yeah. Tomorrow we're talking about the best way to pull your reader into your writing. It's going to be very good. I have extensive notes on this one. Okay, thanks, Lauren. Thank y'all for tuning in, and hopefully I will see y'all tomorrow. Bye.